Hello.
Hello.
How are you? I love a text message that reads, "You asleep?" I was flossing.
You were flossing?
Yeah. I was trying to squeeze in all my things before talking
All your
to you.
bedtime things?
Yeah, all my bedtime things before you.
So are you bed bound?
I am. I'm not. Yeah, I'm on my way. It's true. I'm actually thinking that I'm going to slowly lower the mic over the course of this conversation so that I end up
Prostrate.
Yes, not prostate.
No, that's up your bum. Which, hey, if that's how you want to end the night, I'm not going to yuck your yum. We are not here to bum shame anyone. I have no idea what I am saying, Simon. I am a little bit tired.
I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm just going to move the microphone so I step away from the creaky floor. Hang on. I am very, very sorry to hear that. Is there anything I can do?
I mean, you could do all the heavy lifting by talking for 26 minutes with no hesitation or deviation.
Great. Okay.
No pressure.
This is a podcast in which two friends talk about the pleasures, absurdities, and imperfections of being human. I'm Simon Ellis.
And I'm Lee Miller. Welcome to Midlifing.
So, you had a romantic pizza tonight, ?
Yes, I had a pizza date with a girl in Rome.
I think that is possibly one of the coolest things I've heard.
Yeah.
You had a pizza date with a girl in Rome.
I know.
Wow.
And
Wow.
yes, it was one of us had made them and one of us hadn't. And we were both drinking wine, although I see one of us had a small bottle of wine, which I think is a great idea, like a little half.
Yeah.
So it was very convivial. We just caught up.
Did one of us, I want to know, did one of us rub it in the other one's face that they were eating a pizza in Italy?
No, there was no face rubbing.
Oh,
it wasn't that kind of
my face.
It wasn't that kind of date.
Oh, that's a date with an adequate lack of face rubbing are the perfect kind of date.
Adequate lack of face rubbing, exactly. And yes, so it was just catch up because we don't have a lot of communication. It's something Lil and I have, even though we've spent a long time apart over the course of 26 years. Mm-hmm. And we've never had a lot of comms.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
that's
occasional text messages, like once every 2 or 3 days.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
So me and Bob are, it's safe to say, the opposite.
Yeah.
I phoned Bob at the moment I finished work to say I was walking to the car and on my way home. And Bob said, "Did you like my interruptions?" Which was a series of text messages through the day. She chose a purple heart, then a green heart, and then a poo with heart-shaped eyes.
Wait, you can make a poo with heart-shaped eyes?
I mean...
A smile.
You can... I can. It's one of the emojis. It's got like a smiling heart-shaped eye poo. I don't know what I'm saying.
Okay. So,
yeah.
Okay, so, and did you like your interruptions? So you're the opposite. You're the opposite.
Them.
You are even in the course of a day apart. You are texting, as they say in New Zealand.
Okay, so to give you a sense of our texting, let me see if I can. How do I do this? So I'm opening up my texty message machine. Today we have had one. So am I counting the ones from her or between us?
Oh no, back and forth. Back and forth.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. We've had 18 text messages during the course of today. And I would say today was a quiet day. That includes like a PDF of a book that she found me. So we are quite chatty.
Yeah.
It turns out.
Yeah. No, that's not.
I mean, we're chatty in real life as well. We're not just chatty in text.
I mean, occasionally you and Bob and Lil and I will have. I mean, it's been a while now, but occasionally even you, Bob, and me will have. Look, I think of them as text storms, but actually, by the sounds of it, they are just texting.
It's drizzle. It's drizzle.
It's drizzle.
Yeah, a real storm is what we do.
Yeah. So tonight it really was catching up, because Lil's been back in Rome almost 3 weeks, and
gosh, that long already?
Yeah, well, it's flown by for me because I've just been I've been writing narrative CVs, and hey, we had a I'm trying to gauge trying to get a feel for the room here.
Okay.
And when I say room, I mean you and me.
Yeah,
because we've had a new listener got in touch and has been trying to formulate something to ask us, and there's a sort
holy shoes.
Yeah, and I thought it might. I don't quite know precisely what it. I think it's getting at something, and I thought we could talk about it.
Okay, before we get to it, I just need a bit of context. Firstly, is this new listener somebody we know, or is it a stranger?
Oh. You don't know this person. I do. But I haven't had any contact with this person for some time. And
Coolio.
Yep. And then I think they've gone on a bit of a midlifing bender.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think they might have accounted for all of our downloads in the last 3 weeks.
Okay, that's good to know, because I got a text message from a listener who is also a friend earlier on this week that just said, "But I don't want to be a puddle."
A puddle.
A puddle, which tickled me. However, hit me with your best shot. Dun, dun, dun.
So this person is, I'm going to say, Antipodean. I think the context is that recently, as you know, and I was told by other people, the then Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, stepped down.
That's true.
They don't retire. What do they quit?
Yeah, they quit. They resigned.
Resigned, thank you.
Resign sounds so sort of flouncy, doesn't it? Like,
yeah.
I resign.
Yes, and I think there are
stepped down.
Depending on exactly, and depending on your perspective and depending on various takes on the matter, she was either saving face, meaning she was going to get trounced in the next election. And that are once very popular. Like, I don't have any recollection of such a popular prime minister who was really, when initially elected, wasn't elected. And that is that she was. There was a hung parliament, and there's a certain human being in New Zealand who's known as the kingmaker, the head of a small party, and because they have a proportional system, he effectively decides who gets to be the prime minister, and he chose her. Mm-hmm. His name's Winston Peters. And he's quite anyway, it doesn't matter. And so she became Prime Minister on a shaky mandate at best. Basically a minority Prime Minister, although the majorities work because of the proportional system. So she's having to do a lot of backroom deals and trying to make things happen, which of course is one of the tremendous strengths of proportional systems.
Yeah.
And then various things happened. One thing is that Australian guy shot up 2 mosques in Christchurch and killed all those people. And that was in, I don't even know what year that was. 2017. Oh, it's so hard to remember. 18 maybe. God, anyway. And she was...
COVID times, it's done a number on our brains.
It really has, pre-COVID this was. And so and then her response and how she managed that was just so humane. And then of course, the pandemic hit, and it hit New Zealand late because, arse end of the world and all that. And it meant that they were able to get things in place. They were able to prepare. They were able to sort their shit out. And they had a very much her approach was, a little bit like China, a sort of a zero COVID or a COVID zero. I can't remember what's the phrase now. That they're basically trying to eradicate it or prevent it taking off. And so that was incredibly stringent. The lockdown in Auckland was not like Melbourne's, but it was long and with very few cases. Yes. So you might say that there was and then it started to bite back. The stringency, the growth of anti-vax, let's say, conversations, if I can call them that. I was going to say hysteria, but
well, I was going to go with bullshit. So you did better than me.
Okay, thank you. And and so it started to her popular appeal started to wane, and so that's context. That's none of that is context that my this old friend of mine, who's now a faithful listener, said that is trying to formulate a question about legislative power versus personal intimacy, and I guess it got me thinking about what the line is. Oh, this is hard late on a Friday night. I get that. That's why I was trying to judge the room. But that is, where's the line for you over the power of government? Because clearly during the pandemic, that line was crossed for many people. And many people who I know and who I would have thought otherwise felt like the infringements on, let's say, personal freedom or independence were encroached appallingly through legislation. And I'm wondering how that feels now to you, because you and I were both more or less on the same track, you might say, or we felt similarly about it. And I wonder how that feels for you now looking back. That did governments, let's say just governments in general, overstep their mark, and what would it have taken for them to have overstepped their mark for you?
Okay, that's a really, really interesting question on a day where a colleague is going to a yearly gathering where 1 year ago today she went and got COVID. So COVID was part of the conversation today at work, which it hasn't been for some time.
Wait. So she went she was going to a gathering to commemorate.
A year ago.
Oh no, a year ago.
They have a yearly shindig, and last year was the first shindig they had post COVID rules, and then everybody was like, it was a super spreader event in their friendship group.
Was it really?
Yeah, they were doing karaoke and singing near to one another a Billy Joel song, and as a result, COVID. I mean, they probably would have got it without the Billy Joel.
Which Billy Joel song? Because there's no way
It was "We Didn't Start the Fire." It was always burning since the world's been turning.
And what is the name? Is it called "We Didn't Start the Fire"?
I think it might be "We Didn't Start the Fire."
Yeah.
Anyway,
Marilyn Monroe, JFK, Blown Away.
Yeah.
I remember the lyric.
North Korea, South Korea, the whole lot. And actually, that's what they were trying to remember. The not rap. So, we happen to be talking about it today. Like, oh, COVID, that's a thing, isn't it? Ha 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 ha. I think I am possibly going to, I don't know, maybe I'm not going to surprise people in my response, which is a government would have to go, even the shit show that we have had, would have to pretty much lock me up without access to Jeffrey before I think that they'd overstepped in relationship to something like COVID-19.
Right.
For me, COVID-19 had the potential to be a world-ending plague because we didn't know anything about it at the point at which it emerged, and then it just spread like wildfire. It went from a wet market in China to a global pandemic. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but the speed with which it took over, and the column inches given over to things like Zika virus or Ebola, which had relatively small infection vectors in comparison to COVID-19. And yet, you know, the fact that I can say Zika virus and Ebola, that idea of a transmissible virus being something which could wipe us out.
You mean differently from, because you and I both grew up in the, I guess you might say, the phenomenon which is still burning of HIV. So you're saying that's something different from that.
HIV did a different kind of a number on us, and I'm gonna park that,
okay,
because I think, or maybe I won't park it. Maybe I'll talk about it here. That HIV was something which, for me, as a teenage, as a child, and then coming into my sexuality in the shadow of HIV and the AIDS crisis, informed my understanding of sex and sexuality.
Yeah.
But it was already very, very deeply entrenched in as a virus, as transmissible illness globally, way before I was thinking about putting my dick in anything. Like, way before. I mean, 1984.
You have such a way with words.
I know, I really do. I mean, I'm trying to make sure that we keep our explicit rating. 1984, there was a big push in the UK with the AIDS Don't Die of Ignorance campaign, which coincided with me being in the first year of high school. I was 11 years old.
Oh yeah,
having sex.
yeah. So I mean, I was that much older than you. And I still am.
Yeah.
That is precisely that much older than you.
Yeah, exactly. So it was, for me, it was actually something which informed my understanding of sexuality. That sex was dangerous, not because you might get pregnant, because that was never on the cards for me, but because it might kill you. But so that sits in a different place in my head, and I think because I'm old enough to remember it, but young enough to have not lost friends to it.
Yep. Yep.
Actually, that's not true. I did lose a friend to it, but as a result of a blood transfusion. But you know, that's it's a different story. And you know, anyway. God, I'd forgotten about that. Sometimes remembering people that died when I was at school catches me really short.
I can't. Hold Me Now, Thompson Twins, right? I mean, I never really liked that song, but boy, when I hear it now, I just love it. And there was a kid, and I don't remember his name, who suicided. We must have been fourth form, so 14, maybe 15.
Jesus.
Yeah, and I just remember him having one of those army bags that people wore on this in the 80s, and he had Thompson Twins felt tipped into the bag. That's all I remember about him.
There was a lad so when I was about 13, there was a car crash that killed five kids, 2 in my year, and 3 in upper years, because one of the drivers was in the 6th form. I remember it being like a thing that was talked about. I remember the assembly, but I remember also being relatively untouched about it. It was kind of like it was distant from me. But I remember there was a lad, and I'm deeply ashamed that I can't remember his name, who died in a car crash about a couple of years later. I want to say his name was Ollie, but he was the year above me at school, and I remember him being a dick to me on the bus when I was about 11 or 12, and I was really scared of him. And then my mum and dad ran a pub, you know that, yeah?
Yeah.
And with a restaurant attached to it. So we would have a whole variety of people working
Guests.
in the kitchen.
Oh, right, yeah.
You know, I was thinking about working in the kitchen or working behind the bar. And behind the bar, it would usually be like sixth formers or people back from university. So I would know them, but you know, but not well. So I'd know them by sight. But in the kitchen, like washing up and stuff, it will be people that I might know more. And anyway, this lad, I can't remember his name, and he interviewed for a job as washer up. And my mum and dad gave him the job, and I was horrified because I waited tables, and I just thought, oh my God, I'm just going to get bullied at home now. That's awful. He'd never bullied me. He was just a dick to me once, and I was frightened of him. And there was a girl who didn't go to our school who waited tables, and I remember her name. She was called Cheryl. And she lived at the other end of the village that we lived in. And we would walk her home at the end of a shift because we'd work Friday and Saturday nights.
Who's the we?
Me and this lad.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he would walk me home because I lived in the pub, which was in the middle.
Yeah, on his way back.
And then he would walk home, and this is why I am so ashamed I can't remember his name. For maybe 9 months or so, he was such an important person in my life because we would walk Cheryl home, and we would sit in her front room, this tiny little front room, and just talk until like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, like classic teenager
stuff. And then he'd walk me home, and we'd talk on the way home, and we would just talk about everything. And then my mum and dad sold the pub when I was 15, 16, and I moved out of the town. And then just one day, got a message that he died in a car crash. And I remember being really floored by it because he was at the Hillsborough Stadium on the day of the crush.
Yeah, in 89.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, well, it was Liverpool, so yeah.
Yeah, and it was Liverpool playing Sheffield, I think.
Yeah, it was no, I think it was at Sheffield.
It was at Sheffield. So Liverpool...
It was the FA Cup semi-final, and it wasn't Sheffield they were playing.
Okay, right. I know that it was in Sheffield.
Yeah.
But whoever it was they were playing in that match, Liverpool, that's who he supported. He supported...
So he was down the other end.
He was down the other end, and he I remember him talking just really vividly about it. And then him being dead. And
Nottingham Forest, by the way.
Nottingham Forest. So he supported Nottingham Forest.
There is a lot. I mean, we are so far off government regulation.
I can't believe I can't remember his name, and it will come to me. And
doesn't matter that you don't. Do you think it matters that you don't remember his name? I mean, you think of all the things you've remembered. I mean, the arbitrary nature of what he was called.
He had dirty blonde hair, and he was shorter than me, and he just had this really... He was just such an arsehole.
Was he really? Like, I was going to ask you...
just in a lovely, lovely arsehole kind of a way. He was just cheeky and
that's what he was to you that time. He was...
Yeah, but I was too young to know that that's what it was. It felt dangerous.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I got to know him, he wasn't dangerous at all. He was just lovely.
It's very hard for me to... I mean, even at, 54, it's so hard for me to fathom what that must be like for parents. I find it so physically upsetting to imagine that. There's a very this is going to sound like a record scratch, and I don't mean it to sound like a record scratch. And I'm not trying to introduce levity. I'm really not, but it's going to sound like it. So forgive me. But I happened to watch. I happened to watch the remake of Footloose the other day. And do you know about the remake of Footloose? Do you know that it exists?
I mean, I knew that it was in the world, but Oh, Juliana Hough, I think, might be one of the performers.
I don't know who Juliana Hough is.
I think she was she might have been one of the dancers on the Dancing with the Stars.
Oh yes,
Sitcom
she's
dancing
the main.
thing.
She's the main character.
She has a bit part in Burlesque with Christina Aguilera and Cher. For those of you who are keeping up with Lee's ability to remember stuff that isn't important.
Well, he couldn't remember the name.
Couldn't remember. Oh, I mean, the irony is not lost on me.
Oh, Lee Miller, you're a lovely man.
Juliana Hough, a person who I don't know why I know her name. Fucking hell.
I'm so sorry. It is so unbelievable that you remember
how
those
brains
things.
work.
Oh
yeah.
I'm
Sorry, you were watching Footloose, the remake.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure that it's Julianne Hough. Yeah.
Shitting balls.
Hole in one.
I mean, why is that in there?
Yeah.
For fuck's sake.
And I just watched it the other day. I mean, anyway, the curious thing, of course, it's an odd remake. I mean, it's it's really odd because it sort of is basically, literally a remake. And yet they've also sort of changed things a little bit. But of course, the thing that they show at the beginning, which they didn't do in the original, as far as I can remember, was they show the car crash that kills the 5 kids, teenagers, one of them being the son of the vicar. Preacher, thank you. And so they show that, and then they show the passing of the regulations that you're not allowed to dance. And so it just made me smile thinking about, and I really didn't mean it to induce levity, but there's the themes of our conversation have all appeared in the remake of Footloose.